Welcome to Your Time, Your Money, the show where your time is just as valuable as your money, and we know that. Adam, welcome today.
Great to be here, Mark.
Yeah, it should be an excellent episode. It's already started out fun.
Yeah, already.
12 bloopers in. We're doing pretty good. So
today we get to we're debating whether the big debate between short term versus long term.
Yeah, exactly. Not as big of a debate as I think we have coming up the next presidential election, but pretty big debate. What do I save for and how do I save for them and what have you. So why don't we get in? I'll let you do the honors with the old hourglass.
All right, here we go.
I don't think we're going to take the whole hour on the hourglass, which ironically, I think it's only a 34-minute glass, to be honest with you.
We'll probably be done before then.
Yeah, we call it the hourglass, but I think it only takes 34 minutes to go through it. So for our listeners, we'll get into it. Once again, we want to make sure that we're bringing some value to you in your time. So, we thought it was a good topic to discuss because we get a lot of times questions asked like, hey, what should I save for first? Like, short-term goals, long-term goals. How do I divvy up my money? Mm-hmm. How do I identify my goals? Is it short-term or long-term? So I thought maybe we'd start with short-term.
Sure.
Talk a little bit about that, and then get into the long-term goals and maybe some rules of thumb, right?
Yeah.
Just so we can clarify, in our mind from an advising standpoint, how do you accomplish them all at once?
Right, and and the importance too of having benchmarks to keep you on track for either of these things, right? Short or long-term goals. Yeah,
because when you think about it, your long-term goals are your big goals that everybody thinks about when they start putting money away, right? Your retirement, saving money for, maybe sending the grandkids to college or your kids to college, things along that lines where you have a lot of time for it. And the short-term goals, in some cases, can be roadblocks.
Yeah.
And can hurt you in getting to complete the long-term goals, which ironically are probably your more important goals over long-term.
Yeah.
I think short-term goals, obviously understanding that anything that is, I would say, less than 3 years is good to classify as a short-term goal.
Right.
Yep.
No, I was going to say that having, again, when you're looking at what's important to you in your life and when are those things going to come to fruition, right? So whether it's a mortgage, right, could be a long-term goal for most people or a short-term goal depending on
to pay it off
when they are in those years. So
emergency fund, travel. Most weddings are short-term goals because usually there's not a long engagement of 12 years or what have you.
Right.
Those are probably the big ones. College could be a short-term goal if you've started late in life or adopted kids, right?
Yeah.
If you adopted old kids, maybe you don't have a 12, 15, 20-year goal for college. So if that's, in that 3-year, 4-year window, somewhere in that time frame, it's a short-term goal for you. Typically the question we get asked the most is, where do I put my money for those goals, though?
Right.
And our common response is, well, you don't want to have it anywhere near where it's going to lose a lot of value.
Sure.
Right.
Yep. And what are your liquidity needs going to be for those goals, right? So if something that's more of a longer geared tool we wouldn't use if it's more of a shorter term need.
Yeah, and you can, right, a college, helping college funding or paying for college, right? A child may go to 6 years of schooling.
Mm-hmm.
So that could go past the short term and into a long term, even if you only got a couple of years to save for it.
Right.
Depending on when you're going to need those assets. You may want to have them after the student takes out all the loans and everything along that line to stretch out that short-term goal a little bit more. But ultimately, we want to look for high-yield accounts, high-yield savings accounts, perhaps CDs, things that maybe you can time around the maturity date that that goal is going to come due, things where you have downside protection, where you don't have the market risk.
Right.
Heaven forbid, you need money in 2.5 years and you invest it in the market.
And we have a year like last year pop up all of a sudden.
Yeah, and all of a sudden you lost, a sizable amount of your assets that are geared towards that goal. And then as we were talking about, right, there's always that gray area of goals, and those might be paying off credit card debt, paying down the mortgage, where you're already 15 years into a 20-year or 30-year mortgage, and maybe your goal is to pay it down in the next 5 years or so. So that could be a short-term goal. And then we have long-term goals, right? And most common or classical one, right, is retirement. But it could be, that paying off the mortgage. Maybe it's a brand new home that you just bought.
Right.
And the long-term goal on the 30-year mortgage is to pay it down in 25 or finish the payments on it in 30. Another thing that it could be is maybe a long-term goal of starting a business.
Sure.
Maybe you're a younger person and you say, hey, you know what, I want to save up. I have this great idea, I have this patented product or niche that I want to be in, and you're saving for the business goals.
Yep.
So first off, right, identifying them and seeing what it is. But then when the dollar goes away, we have to identify how much goes towards those goals.
Sure.
Right. I mean, a client comes to you and says, "Hey, Adam, I'm going to put away $100. How should I break that $100 down?" Right. We obviously want more going to a short-term goal.
Right. Right. And that's just it too. That you if that $100, you break it into percentages, right? And you say, well, okay, so X percent is going to go to the short-term goal, X percent is going to go to this long-term goal, or middle-sized goal. Maybe there's one that falls in the middle there. But yeah, that's you want to have an assignment to each and every dollar that you're putting away.
Yeah, what it's going to be used for.
Yep.
And, so if you look at that, just general rule of thumb, I always tell clients, 50% of your money should be going to your short-term goals, right? Another 30 maybe to the gray area, the goals where you want to have it available short-term, but it's probably going to take you a little longer than that. And then 20% maybe to retirement. These are just rules of thumb or generalities. Obviously, you want to sit with an advisor, talk about your specific situation. But the reason those numbers are that is because you don't have time to let it compound and grow. Right? I mean, retirement, most people have 20, 30 plus years. So 20% of their savings going to retirement can usually sufficiently fund that goal. Versus if you have 2 or 3 years, you're going to want to put a large majority of your money putting away towards those short-term goals.
Yeah.
The great thing about the short-term goals is if you oversave for them, they can just domino or flow to the next goal, the midterm or the retirement goal in general.
Yep.
And you can always use non-retirement money for other goals. If your kid gets a scholarship or decides not to go to college, you can always recycle that into your retirement plan.
Yep. Yeah, and then there's also we call it an emergency fund, but you never know if all of a sudden someone needs a new roof, and for their house, and they need to have a substantial amount of cash to be able to pay for that. So those, again, funding the shorter term versus longer.
and I think a lot of times clients will overlook the emergency fund.
Yep.
It's a safe to spend account.
Yep.
Right, but that emergency fund should not go to zero when your short-term goals come up. If it is, then that puts you at risk of going into debt, going into credit card debt, or whatever that might be.
Yep.
And obviously, we don't want any type of debt if we don't have to, but let alone credit card debt at 28% or whatever rates are now on a credit card, which is never a good thing.
Yep.
I wrote down one thing is don't let your short-term goals overshadow your long-term. A lot of times those roadblocks early on, they seem so pressing on you, and you get this like weight on your shoulder of like, oh my gosh, I got all these bills coming up and I got all this stuff going on. The best thing I can say to our listeners, don't let them overshadow the fact that you still need to be putting money away for retirement. You still need to accomplish those long-term goals, and you don't want to become a financial burden to your kids either.
Right.
A lot of times people focus so early on the short-term goals because they're concerned about their kids and they want to pay for college, and maybe they can't really afford college, but they want to pay for all of college. And then they get to retirement and then they become a financial burden to the kids because they didn't save.
Right. Yeah.
And that's where the mother-in-law apartments come in, and the in-law suites, and all of a sudden now you're living with your kids, and and they're helping you out more than you were helping them out at that point. So I think that's the main thing. And some of the things that you can do for some of the short-term goals is it sounds a little common sense, but I mean, you can look at things around the house that perhaps you can sell to get to those goals.
Yeah. Yep.
Right? I mean, the only reason I bring it up is because Warrensburg is having the world's largest yard sale, right this week or whatever.
That's funny.
But I mean, you might have a lot of things in your life that you want to clean out and restructure and can sell and generate some money for those short-term goals.
Yep. My wife keeps trying to get me to get rid of my toy collection, but that's not really going to happen.
Oh boy, don't do it. Don't do it. It's the Bob Builder collection now.
G.I. Joes, Transformers, some valuable comic books.
Well, you never know. You never know what's out there in the attic or in the basement that maybe can generate some money to get to those goals as well. So, any other major things you want to add on short, long-term goals?
They're important to have. Don't shortchange the idea of setting goals for yourself. And a lot of times we think of these things as if you're an athlete, you want to get better at your play. right, of how you're performing. Well, it should be about that with life too, and finances. And like I said, every dollar should have an assignment of what it's doing for you.
And a good thing for the short and intermediate, I think, is to write it down, right? Write it down with your spouse, write it down with your significant other, discuss the time frame, right? Because if you want, let's say you want a boat, right? And that's your short-term goal is to get a boat or something along that lines. It's good that both spouses are on the same page as far as the time frame goes. So that one's not expecting like, hey, we're going to get it next year, and financially maybe you can't afford it. But it's 2 years out, so you can get the down payment and find what you want. But having it written somewhere in the household, whiteboard or journal or something along that lines with some time frames to it can help you budget and say, hey, you know what, we're going to get this in 24 months, and if we put away $200 a month, this is what we're going to have for the down payment. So, I think that's a good, topic to cover today. Hopefully the clients can start, getting some pen to paper, getting their goals out.
The other thing I was just going to say is a lot of times we do this at the beginning of the year, right? At January 1st, New Year's Day. But any time is a good time to start setting goals.
Yeah, and something we've been trying to do with these podcast series is be proactive with it, right? So a couple episodes ago, we did pre-holiday planning. Here we are in October, and we're doing pre-holiday planning. But I think the common mistake is people wait too long on the education, and they wait too long on the motivation. So the fact that we can start talking about goals before your New Year's resolution, might allow them to stick a little bit as well. And if you're not a client, please like and subscribe. First off, it's the most important part, and you can reach the Astley Group at 43 British American Boulevard in Latham, New York, 12110. And a lot of you don't use old pen and paper, quill and parchment anymore, so you can find us at yourtimeyourmoney.net for your net worth. You can go on there, click the button that says contact, and schedule an appointment with us, whether it's Zoom, in-house, in person, in the office here. There's a ton of different ways that we can meet with you, and even if you're out of state, which is probably a large part of our database at this point. And then always 844-444-YTYM. 844-444-YTYM for Your Time, Your Money is also a great contact source for us. And as always, it's your time,
your money.